Welcome to Tell Us a Story, the podcast dedicated to the stories that connect us through our shared life experiences, as well as the stories that reveal the sometimes stark differences. Only by truly listening to one another can we bridge the gaps that divide us by fostering empathy, respect, and kindness with one another. In this episode, Liliana Arias shares the joys and challenges of growing up in Colombia during the Columbian Internal Armed Conflict, and how those experiences guided her after she met and married her husband, a Peace Corps volunteer, and moved to the United States. So let's sit back and listen as Liliana tells us a story.
My name is Liliana Arias, and I am from Colombia, South America. But I wanted to talk a little bit about how growing up in the little town of Teruel is a little town between the Andes. It's very, very beautiful. We were extremely poor. The reason for so much poverty was because we were going through a war. It was so bad that my grandfather, one day, he had a little farm, and my grandfather, actually, the guerrillas came, and they told him that if he did not get out of there immediately that night, the next day, they were going to come and take everything, and they're going to kill him. So my grandfather came to the little town, totally destitute, and that was the war. And so we experienced a lot of sufferings, mostly hunger, because there was not too much we could do. We couldn't really go work and grow things. We were just really afraid that they were going to come and harm us or do something to us. So we suffered a lot of hunger. But in the midst of hunger and despair sometimes, and in the midst of that suffering, we had an amazing family unit. And also because the Colombian people are people that are always there for you. In Colombia, you can just go tell someone your troubles. You can just go and just cry to somebody. Your feelings and whatever your pain, you can always share it with your neighbor or with whoever. Anyone will listen to you. It's a culture where people love to listen to other people. It's a culture where you can embrace whatever is it that is hurting you or bothering you, and it's okay. No one is going to say, well, you got to go to therapy or something like that. Everybody is like, what can I do to make you feel better? So although I grew up with all my aunts, I only had one uncle, and my uncle was killed by the guerrillas when I was 9 years old. And unfortunately, we had to go find him, and he was stabbed at the end of town. And he was the person that actually brought a lot of support to our household. So after he died, we found ourselves very poor and extremely scared. We were really scared. But again, my grandmother and my grandfather and my mother would always say to us, don't worry about anything tomorrow, because they were very kind of religious. And they would say, don't worry about anything because we will have something tomorrow. My grandfather sometimes will go to the river and get fish. And my grandmother and I and my mother will at least have one meal a day. Sometimes not. Sometimes we will have just maybe coffee, or it was a very bad time. But when I think about it, when I think about those times, those sufferings made the person that I am today. I feel for people. I want to help people. I'm constantly reaching for something that I can do. I feel today that that was an amazing blessing. I am so grateful for all the stuff that, although they were bad then, but I did have my mother that loved me so much, and she never was angry. It's amazing, like, we were in a war, but we never despair. We never fought. We never were aggressive. We were always like positive that tomorrow we were going to make it, that the strength was in us to survive. And we did it. I feel that Colombia, till this day, still at war. Colombia has been a country where it's a very aggressive country. And I think the levels of poverty and richness, there are people that are so wealthy in Colombia and people that are so poor that have no choices. They have nothing. And so a lot of people, it's just difficult to explain how a lot of people survive there. I mean, I'm one of them, but when we moved to the city of Neiva so that I could go to school at the age of 12, we lived in this house, and it was just a house. We had water, but we didn't have electricity or anything like that. And my mother, she used to like to make soup, little bits of soup. She always believed that quantity, you sacrifice the quality by making quantity. So she always made tiny little bits of food, but very tasty, really tasty. And so she made this soup one day out of chicken feet, and I think she put potatoes and onions and cilantro. The soup tasted like really good, and she put one bowl for her. She only made 2 bowls of soup. It was little. And so she had 1 bowl of soup, and I had another bowl of soup. I told her how wonderful and how tasty, because it was really tasty. And then all of a sudden, somebody knocked on the door. She said, "Go see who it is. Go, run." And I went, and it was a beggar with a gourd asking for food. And so I look at my mother and I said, "Whoops, we don't have any food. We only have this, what we're eating right now." And then she says, "No, we do." And so she took my soup. She had already had her soup, eaten her soup. So she took half of my soup. I only had half a bowl of soup, and she took that and gave it to the beggar. And I was kind of upset. I said to her, "How did you dare take my soup? I'm hungry also." And then at that point she says, "Guess what? Right now you're having as much as the beggar, and the beggar is having as much as you did in your stomach." And then when the beggar was really happy, and when she left, my mother said to me, "I want to teach you something." She said, "I want you to know, whatever God gives you, it is not just for you. And so you want to have things in life, you must share it with other people. That way you will never do without." A very transformative day for me at the age of, 12. Since that day, I never forgot about it. I met my husband in Neiva. Neiva is the capital of the state of Huila. That's where he was sent from the Peace Corps. And one evening, I was coming back from a friend of mine's house, and I was going to go get in the bus to go home. And when I was going to get the bus, I saw 2 Americans. And I've never really been embarrassed to talking to people or anything like that. So I thought, I'll just say hello. So I said hello. I said hello, and in Spanish, One person, he already spoke Spanish. His parents were from Argentina, and so he spoke Spanish. So we started talking a little Spanish, and then my husband, Russ, his name is Russ. He said hello, and then I said to them, "Where are you? Where are you going? Are you Americans? Where are you from?" We just started talking, and then they said, "Well, we have the cheeses and this wine, and we're gonna go to Tony's house about 3 blocks from here." And then they said, "Would you like to join us?" And then I thought, "Oh no, I don't know if I should do that." And then I said, "Well, my mother's waiting. My mother's waiting for me, so I gotta go. But thank you very much. This is like really, really nice." And then about 2 weeks later, I went to the Galleria where you buy all the, the farmer's market. And then I said, "Oh," and then he spoke very little, but he said that he was buying some meat and some vegetables, and that his friend had gone to United States for Christmas, so that he was taking care of his dog. You couldn't buy dog food those days over there. And so he thought he was making the food for the dog. And so I said, "Oh, okay, well, so I'll help you." And I said, "Well, where do you live?" He said, "I live that way, maybe a 10-minute walk from here." And I said, "Yeah, sure, I'll help you cook." So I went, and from there we started dating and, started going places and stuff. And a year and a half later, we decided to get married, but the Peace Corps didn't think that was a good idea. That was a no-no to go. A Peace Corps volunteer going to another country and, getting married, that was not desirable, I guess. He said that he was going to marry me, whether they liked it or not. And so he decided to quit the Peace Corps. And then we got married. And I came to this country in 1971. And I am amazed at how easy it was for me to come to this country, because I was married to a U.S. citizen. And so when we went to the embassy, they gave us a visa the same day. And I was able to come here with a green card. And then I became a U.S. citizen 7 years later. So that's how I came here. When I came to this country, I used a lot of those incredible resources that I had growing up, that we had to be curious, that we had to push, that we had to do stuff. So when I came to this country, I decided that I was going to learn a lot of stuff. And I decided I was going to learn English. And I pushed to learn English, like really hard, because my husband, after 3 months that we came here, he said, "Well, I am not going to speak any more Spanish to you. You must learn the language, because, let me tell you something, because if you don't, the American people are not going to know who you are. And you're not going to know who they are, And part of learning a culture is to interchange feelings and thoughts and all that. So isn't that great that they're going to be able to understand you? You have a lot to offer as a Colombian woman, And I didn't have that many friends that back then in the 70s, there were not that many Hispanics. So I only knew just a couple of Hispanic people. And so I came to an American family. They were so kind to me. And they welcomed me. And yes, and doors did open. And also I decided that I wanted to learn how to cook. So I got all the books. I got all these books on cooking, and I used to work at the Her Tavern as their pastry chef. People used to come there waiting for my pastries at the door. So that's one of the things that I did. And also, about 10 years ago, my cousin in Colombia, she helped with this organization. It was called House of the Abuelos, the house where beggars and people, old people that didn't have food could go and have lunch. Kind of like a soup kitchen type of thing. And so here, I decided that I wanted to help with her program that she had over there. So I decided to cook. Every month, I would have incredible dinners here. I love to cook. So I have these amazing dinners, and I couldn't charge people, but they could donate their food. So I donated a lot of the money for the organization, and I did it for 7 years. I decided to learn how to paint, so I became an artist, and that has been also one of the most amazing gifts that it was given to me. Through art, I have been able to express a lot of the Colombian culture. Because my paintings are really colorful. I took a lot of lessons here in Adams County with a lot of people. Then I went to the Art Association of Harrisburg and took lessons in Harrisburg. And then after that, I took lessons from a Colombian master in Colombia, and it's been incredible. The development from, this little girl that had absolutely nothing to go through all that and come to where I am today and the person that I am today. I am just so grateful. I became an interpreter for the courthouse. I did that for 13 years. I wasn't just an interpreter. I was just a person that the defendants could talk to. I felt like I was in their side, feeling bad for them, for what they were going through. And a lot of them were Mexicans, but they were not there for really bad crimes or anything like that, but usually they were DUIs and they were deported. Actually, I work when the Obama administration, and if you had a DUI, you were deported. But anyway, so that was an amazing job that I had. Sometimes when I was interpreting, I would say, wow, like 30 years ago, I could not speak English, and here I am interpreting this really complicated English, the law, and words that sometimes I would interpret them in Spanish, and they sometimes did not understand it because the interpretation of that word was very complicated for them to understand, but I still took the time for them to understand what the judge or the lawyers were saying, because to me it was really important for them to really know, and to know that they were not just a defendant, that they were people. And that I got from Colombia. That's a Colombian thing, So Colombia has given me so much, although I suffered so much. But I have this amazing gratitude. Gratitude for Colombia for making me the person that I am. The center of my being is Colombian. And here in this country, the opportunity that I was given to grow. But I also feel that if I wasn't a driven person, I would still be here not speaking English, And one thing that I feel that people really should know about Hispanics is that sometimes Americans criticize the Hispanics because they say, well, they don't learn the language. Why don't they learn the language and all that? But I just feel that as a Hispanic person, you kind of feel kind of inferior. You grew up in your culture. You don't grow up with like self-esteem. Like your parents are not saying, "Oh, you can do everything you want to in life. You can become anything you want to in life." You know, you're actually surviving. You don't have time for that. And in this country, like I used to listen to my husband say to my kids, "You guys can be anything you want to be in life." It's the culture, it's the American culture, and we don't have that. So that's a big barrier that a Hispanic has when they come here, that they, they don't have the self-esteem to think that they can do it. I was really lucky that I had a husband that, because he lived in Colombia, he actually knew the culture, somewhat, because he lived in Colombia for 2 years. So he understood how things were. And so I was able to learn the culture, and I was able to be understood, and I was able to share the type of a person that I am. And they were able to share who they were, and there are not that many differences really when you think about cultures. It's different, but when you really look at it, we all have the same needs. And we have so much in common, and we can overcome so many differences by just sharing our love story, life story. I find that a lot of Americans are extremely empathetic and willing to listen to something like this, to something that someone wants to share. Learning this culture was very difficult, but very rewarding, extremely rewarding. I was very afraid to come here, to tell you the truth. I was really afraid to come here because I thought I was going to get discriminated, because people really talk a lot about discrimination in this country, and in Colombia, I mean, about this country. And I was afraid of that. And it did happen. And it has happened so many times that right now I just don't even look at it the way that I look at it then, because then it was like, wow, like such an insult. And it was something that I could do absolutely nothing. And I would look at my skin and I would say, wow, you're doing that because I have a different color? How dumb of you. How inconsiderate. I can't change it. I don't understand it. I would just be so frustrated and so angry. But right now, I took it to a different level of understanding of where does that come from? Why does one want to be discriminated against another person? And it comes way, way back because it's taught. Right now, I want to tell you the story about the market, okay? Because this is very, very meaningful to me. And I always believe that sometimes we think, oh, we can't change a person because that's the way they think, and that's the way they are, and that's the way they're going to act, and that's it. But I always think that, no, you cannot think that way. I'm a truly believer that we can change people by changing ourselves first. Only. When we change ourselves in a way of thinking, then we are changing another person. And that day, at that market over here, somebody in front of me was saying that the Mexicans are taking the jobs from the Americans, and that is the reason that President Trump was going to do something about it, and why don't they go home and all this stuff. And Actually, the cashier told her that if she needed to be like that she needed to do that outside, not in the store, that was not allowed. And I was the only Hispanic in there, and I thought, she can't be talking about anyone else. And then she said, they don't even pay taxes. She left, and I was hurt, but I wasn't even like before. Like I would feel this pain in my heart, and like I would feel very inferior, and I would feel like disrespected, and like it's this feeling that I don't even know how to explain it. It's a feeling that you don't even know what to do, what to say. It's hard to understand that concept. But anyway, so I pay for my groceries, and they have these big bins with canned goods that you can buy, right there in front of the store. So Scratch and Dent. And she was looking in there when I was leaving, and then I went in there and I said to her, ma'am, I don't know your name. What is your name? And then she gave me her name. And then I said to her, were you saying that stuff because of me? And then she said, well, I'm just saying it because all the Mexicans, because we are sick of them and all this stuff. And I said, well, where did you learn that? Do you know any Hispanics? Do you know any blacks? Did you ever go to another country? I said, did you ever do anything like to know another culture or something? You seem to me like a really angry person. And I said, you probably learned it from who? Who did you learn that from? Because you know what? When you were a little girl, you were not born like that. We're born perfect. We're not born like to hate people. No, we're born perfect and beautiful and cute and adorable, don't you think? Like that. And then she looked at me and he said, who are you? And then I said, well, you know what? I happen to be Colombian. I'm not even Mexican, what you were talking about. And I said, you know what? I pay taxes because I'm a U.S. citizen and I own a house and I had to pay big taxes on a house. And I said, and when I used to work in the courts as an interpreter, I had to pay taxes. And any job that I had, I paid my taxes. And I was kind of nice. I wasn't angry or anything. This woman that actually trashed me. But so I said to her, who taught you? And then she said, my damn mother. She said, my damn mother. She's so hateful. And I said, well, it kind of sounds like, yeah, she's very kind of hateful. And you learned it from her. And then she said, you're right. Since we were little, she hated Mexicans. She hated Puerto Rican. She hated everybody. And I said, well, I don't think it has to do anything with the Mexicans or the Puerto Ricans. I think that your mother just has some kind of pain in her, so she's taking it out on the Mexicans and the Puerto Ricans. I don't really think that this has to do with the immigrants coming here or anything. This has to do with the anger that something happens to your mother, so your mother is not able to maybe get some help from all the stuff that she has in there, so she has to take it on something, and then she taught you how to be like that. It's not your fault that you're like that. I said, it's not your fault. You remember I told you, you were born perfect. Do you want to be like your mother? Hateful like that? I said, it hurts to be like that. Right now, you're like almost in tears. I said, you're more hurt than me. And you were hurting me. See what I mean? See the dynamic with your mother? She said, I hate my mother. I hate her. And I said, maybe you dislike her for what she does, not her, but what she does to you. And I said, I feel bad for you. And then I said, I hope that you don't say the stuff that you say about the Mexicans, and stuff, because that hurt us really deeply. You have no idea. You're a white American, so you have no idea how to be discriminated because of your color. But I do. So that hurts you and it hurts me. So we are both hurting, So I said, can we do something about it? I said, can we do something about it? And then she said, like what? And then I said, well, next time that you look, become aware, you look. If you see Hispanics or Black people, whoever you hate, to just know that we're all here suffering. I mean, some kind of something, but that doesn't you don't have to like people, but you don't have to hurt them in word or action. We don't have the right. We do not have the right. And she looked at me and then she calmed down. And then I said, are we going to be happy from now on? Are we going to be okay? We're going to be okay together? I'll be okay because I was able to talk to you. I said before, many years ago when I was discriminated, I would not talk like this. But right now it has come to the point that I have to realize that these people are actually have something to do more than just the color of somebody else's skin. And so she said, all right. That was an amazing moment for me. You know what I mean? And if I could change somebody, I could have just gone in there and be belligerent to her, but I chose not to. I chose to understand her level of suffering. And why? Because I had suffered. So I got to that point where I felt good after I did that. Go into my car and I said goodbye and I gave her a hug. I think to my younger self, I would like to tell her that not everything is what you think. And a lot of things that we believe have been ingrained in us. And we react to the things, to our beliefs. But sometimes that's not necessarily true. Sometimes when I think about what I went through and that I didn't have too much protection as a young girl, although my mother protected me how she could, but she was also suffering tremendously. I like to tell that little girl that she was very brave and that she was so good considering the circumstances, and that I actually did my best, and sometimes not even knowing, and that I became something that I didn't think I could. And right at this stage in my life, I feel like I have accomplished a lot, not only for myself, but also for other people that I have helped. I'm still helping my relatives that are very poor in Colombia. Nothing was in vain, nothing. Nothing that I went through in my life was in vain. Those were the learning experiences that brought me to that special place where I feel today. And everybody has to forgive themselves for the bad things or the things that we think they're so bad, but the forgiving of ourselves is the most difficult part. But I constantly reminding myself what I have become and where I came from. And so I nurture her sometimes, that little girl that needed a lot of nurturing, that didn't get it because for some reason, and that she is okay.
Thank you, Liliana, for sharing your story with us. If you would like to see some of Liliana's Colombian-inspired artwork or learn more about this podcast, please visit the show notes at tellusastory.info.